Hey, it's Bill Gross, the LA probate expert, and I interview professionals and services to help you build your business and serve your clients. One of the professionals I've had a really tough time getting to meet, really, I've worked at it, but I finally found one, is the probate bond company. When a family enters probate, oftentimes they need to have at least a minimum bond to be appointed as an executor administrator. Sometimes they'll need a larger bond to avoid court authorities or court procedures. And the bond service company becomes very important. And so it's something that I've learned to help my customers get. And I'm really excited to bring in today a professional in the field who this is what he does for business, Aaron Duncan. Aaron, how you doing?
How are you doing today, Bill? Thanks so
Fantastic.
much for your time.
My pleasure. Man. We've spoken a couple times. I've always enjoyed talking with you, and I think there's a lot to learn in this niche. That we all do our job, but if we work together, we can do our job better. So I'm really excited to meet with you. And you're calling from what area? Where are you located geographically?
I'm in the Virginia area, but I would mostly say the DMV area, which is the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I provide surety bonds in Virginia, DC, and Maryland, mostly. That's where I provide the bonding services.
Got it. And when you were a kid, you grew up, the other kids want to be firemen, policemen, football players. You grew up saying, I want to be a surety bond representative. Was that your ambition in life?
I wish that was the case, but I actually started on the criminal bonding side, where we began to post surety bail bonds, and then we transitioned, with the changes in the surety bail bond industry into the probate industry, and that's where I was able to come across the content with probate mastery and helping clients in the probate field.
Oh, so did you take the class of probate mastery or you just, you
I
on the,
have.
oh, good for
Yes,
you.
I have taken a probate mastery class, and I'm very familiar with the content. And I was one of the only professionals that was actually on the All the Leads platform as well, and going to the conversations that they would host. And I was the only professional that was the surety bond guy. Everybody else was real estate and
Yeah,
investors and things
yeah.
in that nature.
And they don't know they need you. I think that's one of the things is, and there's two ways that I use your service. And so we'll talk about them a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about surety bonds for probate families. When do you most commonly get brought into a probate case? And then what is the service specifically you're providing?
Thanks for asking, Bill. Well, essentially, you have situations where there's an administrator, an executor, or what you would maybe call a conservator. Um, in an administrator arrangement, that's when there is no will, and a family member or friend comes to qualify as a personal representative with the courts, and they have to go through, of course, the bonding process, which is an underwriting process. Then there's the executor, of course, where their name is actually outlined in the will. And generally, with the executor, sometimes bond is waived in our state, but if they're out of state, then that's when they require the bond as the executor. And then, of course, with the conservative side, that's when somebody's incompetent or deemed incompetent. And then there's a guardian bond, of course, as well, when there are minor children that are involved.
So you're going to be used and of course, laws change by state or vary by state, and then practices by county. So in California, um, every probate needs at least a $20,000 bond, and as a minimum, and then they may or may not need a bond for all the assets in the estate, depending on the authority that the court gives the estate. And so the bond is kind of like an insurance policy. Who is it protecting? What does the bond do if somebody doesn't do something? What's the bond step in and resolve?
Essentially, what a surety bond is, it's a three-party contract where you have the principal and the indemnitor. And essentially, what happens is it guarantees the court uh, payment for the surety for the bond that's issued. So it's more of a guarantee. That's essentially what I would call it. It's a guarantee in the event that there's a default. So let's just say that you have an administrator, an executor that mishandles funds or resources. The courts would call that account into question. And if there were an issue, they would issue what you would call a default judgment or a default. And in that default, that's when the surety would come in, and that's when they would of course, cover for that loss.
So it seems to me common cases are where an administrator or executor maybe misses a debt or a deadline, and the debt comes up, and the court says, "Hey, you owe these people money," and they say, "We've already distributed all the funds, but we're short." That's where the bond would come into play, and then the bond company perhaps could turn to the executive administrator and say, "Hey, you owe us that money. We need to get it back because you distributed it." Is that kind of how the process works?
Absolutely. There's an indemnity agreement with the administrator or the executor. So, of course, the bonding company does cover the loss if there is a loss, but in return, we would come after the administrator or the executor, whoever indemnified the bond.
So it's not a get out of jail free card to embezzle money. It's more going to provide
No, it is.
I think that's a common
And,
misconception.
and essentially, the way that the bonds are underwritten, they're underwritten with individuals that are financially stable. Generally, in some of these agreements, they ask for a personal financial statement. They run your credit. So we've had many of cases where individuals just simply don't qualify from a credit standpoint, and that's when individuals have to acquire somebody on the outside or bring an attorney in, which the underwriters like to see when an attorney is involved.
So there's two parts. There's an attorney involved in the case, meaning somebody trying to do it pro se or pro per on their own without an attorney on the probate side. But you're saying also they like to get the attorney in to be on the bond application so that the attorney is
Absolutely
responsible. To some regard, they are responsible to the court. And so all the bond does is kind of confirm, I think, their duty. Most attorneys don't like to do that. In fact, my experience, very few will, but the few that do are bringing value to their customer and get paid, I think, as a result.
Absolutely. I mean, the underwriters love to see an attorney signing on a bond. I mean, that's good as gold, because they have an ethical responsibility as well as fiduciary responsibility now pertaining to the case.
Can you share what percentage of bond applications aren't underwritable, either for you or just in the industry in general? Is there a rule of thumb number or something you can share? Because it's not zero, and it's not 90%, but there's a percentage that aren't bondable. What number do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Generally, I've found that most of my clients that I serve, they're older and more established as it pertains to resources. I would hate to discriminate, but there is a class, of individuals that have wealth and have assets, and they generally have family members and friends that have people in place to handle these business matters. So, from a standpoint where there's someone who doesn't qualify, very rare. But in the small estate cases, it's generally where I may come across that, cases that are maybe under 100,000, or cases where there's a home where there was a catastrophic death and somebody has to come in and there was no will, and they've got a family member on the outside that's trying to get a hold of the house before it goes into foreclosure.
And I know that you can't give us guideline issues, but can you give me, generally speaking, for example, somebody who has no real financial wealth, but they're going to inherit a property, so they have minimal credit, they have minimal assets in the bank, but they are the executor or the administrator of an asset that they're going to get a couple $100,000. Is that sufficient to get bonded, or do you still need to see credit history and assets as well?
Well, sometimes what can happen is the attorney, at least in the Virginia jurisdiction in our state, they can file what you call a real estate affidavit, which finds a way to go around the probate process to where they can actually inherit and avoid probate. But in cases where a person doesn't qualify, they would have to find somebody that does qualify.
Yeah.
The law is the law, so I wish we all could, get around it from time to time, but that's not always the case.
I suspect of your Rolodex of referring attorneys, you have some that regularly will sign on the bond and solve the problem for the customer. Is that true?
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and so as a real
And
estate agent, I'd want to know who those are, because if I come across those customers, I don't want to have another problem, which is I send them the wrong attorney. Now we can't do the case. I want to send them to one that gets the deal done. So do you, are you I would think a referral source for a realtor who's looking to refer a customer to an attorney before you get to the attorney? Perhaps you should verify if they're bondable or not. And if they're not, then that narrows the field, but maybe leaves some good quality options available still. Yeah.
absolutely. Generally, the attorneys that are practicing the probate and estate planning arena, they generally know the protocol and they're comfortable with signing.
Yeah.
We have many attorneys that we work with specifically to do this all the time, because there are cases where, somebody even may leave in a will that their attorney has to be involved in selling their assets or selling their property. So generally, probate attorneys, or if we call estate planning attorneys, they're familiar with the protocol of bonding.
So I don't mean to correct you, but maybe to clarify a little bit, when I run the caseload in LA County, 90% of the attorneys who of the cases are handled by attorneys who've done one or less in the last 12 months. So those who do regular business, I think you're 100% right. They know the protocol, they know the risks, they know how to protect the risks, and they're okay signing on the probate bond. But the ones who don't do but a probate once in a while don't really know the code, don't really know the procedures. They're a little nervous about everything, and they're not likely to. I think that's a reason why it's important for a customer to find a specialist in this area, and this is just another reason why.
Absolutely. What I've come to learn in my experience, you have many different types of attorneys out there practicing different type of law. And I found that the criminal defense attorneys, essentially, they don't have a clue about probate.
Right.
And even some of the judges that happen to uh, get on the bench and become judges, they're unfamiliar with the estate planning laws and probate laws and things of that nature. And they
Yeah.
have to get counsel from attorneys that
Right.
practices and that they're practicing for 25 to 30 years. We have a attorney here in this area that I can think of now where judges actually get counsel from him on what to do, because he's been practicing in the probate field for so long. So there is no, I guess, if you want to say, integration with attorneys where they're practicing all different types of law and specialize. And I've yet to find one. Generally, these probate attorneys, they're strictly probate, and they may have other practicing attorneys that practice other fields. But
Right.
probate and estate planning attorneys, that's their bread and butter.
100%. Those are the ones I work with. I counsel my clients and my team members. When you go to the attorney's website, if it says probate administration, estate planning, elder law, elder abuse,
Correct.
maybe family law, because that
Elder
bleeds
care.
over a little bit.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
But if it has DUI, bankruptcy, that's probably not the right attorney, because they're out of their lane. And
Correct.
the ones that I find they're great, they won't touch that stuff. They might refer it to a colleague. They won't touch it.
Oh, they won't. They won't. I mean, I spoke to a criminal defense attorney today while I was in court, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, you thinking about coming over into the probate field now that you've been practicing criminal for the last 15 years?" He says, "Not quite yet. I don't understand that." So it is an area of law where you have to have some specialty and you have to have some season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the customer gets much more value from that experience that we have. And I think also from you. So let's take off the service hat a little bit and talk a little bit about business development. What do you do to generate business? How do you, because really, to some regard, you're doing the same things that we real estate agents are doing or investors are doing. We're out looking for people who need our service, families inheriting property. Is all your business referred in through attorneys, or and if so, how you develop the business, or what else do you do?
Yeah, my bread and butter is the courts. I remember seeing you on a probate mastery platform where you were discussing how you were going to court, every day out of the week, and you had a goal of, I think, contacting 2 people per day. I think that's what your quota was. So I've kind of adopted that mindset as well over the years. Maybe not two people a day, but I at least want to make contact, because the more contact and more familiarity they have with me, the more they'll be comfortable with having their clients come to me.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I'm visible in the courts on a regular basis. I make sure I'm developing relationships, sending letters, making contacts. And I generally get referrals from these attorneys and vice versa. Families in the past that have used my services, they'll call back when somebody's had a death in the family, and they'll, ask me if they've got an attorney or if I can help them with bond issues.
Yes.
So it's an industry where you kind of have to be visible. You
Mhm.
want to be in contact with the courts and the people that are practicing in the field on a regular basis.
More contacts, more contracts.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. It's so right. Pre-COVID, daily I was in court, and daily there was one particular bond company that had 3 or 4 reps on a daily basis. Now, okay, LA is the largest probate court in America. It's the largest, I think, civil court in America, actually, the courthouse. And we had 9 different departments. So there'd be 5 of them, and they're running around from room to room, keep them pretty busy. But it was amazing, and they were there every day, and they were sitting in the courtroom looking for leads and seeing their attorneys and shaking hands and just being available. And that one company just dominated the business. I never met a competing company, because there was no oxygen in the rooms. These guys, did that job. They were there. I felt the same way as a realtor. There's no other realtor who would come daily, because I was there to some degree. How is the court system now? How open is it? And do you still go? Because in LA, it just isn't productive. The attendance is down 90% from what it was pre, so I can't get the same contacts. I do go whenever I have a matter. I make a point of going in person rather than video. But how about your business, where you are? What, in the courts that you work, do you go to court
Well,
still?
of course, pre-COVID changed a lot of things. I mean, it was crazy, what COVID did. But now they have been very convenient for a lot of the probate appointments, in where they're doing Zoom.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you can avoid probate, just by doing a Zoom interview or a Zoom appointment, via Zoom.
Right.
So Zoom has saved, court business or any of the actual different functionalities that need to take place with the court. You can do hearings now via Zoom. So instead of having to attend in person, you're saving yourself time and the headache just by clicking on a Zoom, right at your attorney's office or wherever your place of residence is.
So a lot of people watch my channel are real estate agents looking to build their probate business. How would you, if you had a friend or family member getting into real estate, they wanted to do probate business, they knew the basics fairly well, but they're working on developing the business, what would you recommend for them as business activities for them to build their book of business today?
Well, from a real estate perspective, probate it's hard to understand. What I would suggest is something kind of like what you did. You want to go to some of these probate hearings. You want to try to understand what's going on, what's taking place, because you have commissioners that act like judges that are overseeing these accounts. And generally, they have appointments where people are coming on and people are coming off. Probate, as you've expressed in a lot of your commentary, it's very niche. You have to kind of know how the business works, how the transactions take place, the ins and outs, the inner workings. You have to be very familiar, because you can advise somebody as a realtor, because you're trying to compare a basic residential or commercial transaction to a probate transaction, where it's just simply not that easy. There are other steps that are involved when probate is involved.
Right.
So I suggest that you get very familiar with the probate process by just simply going to court, asking questions, just being a sponge, and be willing to learn at all times, because there are different laws that are changing on a yearly basis. These people are going to the general assemblies and creating different laws, and things are changing all the time. So you want to, be open-minded as possible, especially in an industry like this.
So if a real estate agent went to court to kind of learn, imagine they're in a different state, than you service, let's say Michigan or Texas, and they bump
Correct.
into the Aaron Duncan of that courthouse, maybe not as good looking as you, but they're the probate bond guy. Would you recommend they walk up to him, introduce himself, and maybe ask him out to lunch just to network and try to learn what they're doing and see if they can work together?
Absolutely. I mean, you definitely want to build relationships. One thing about the real estate industry is relationships are everything.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when you're doing a listing and you have a buyer on the other side, you're exchanging business cards and building relationship with the real estate agent on the other side. So relationships are everything. You don't want to be so overly competitive, that it becomes a turnoff. Relationships are everything in the probate industry as well as in the real estate industry.
Speaking of relationships, when I kind of researched you a little bit before we met, I noticed I went onto the Prince William, Virginia. Prince William is a county in Virginia
Correct.
website, and in the court clerk's website, they have you listed as a bond surety company right on the website. So that seems like I don't want to say a stamp of approval, but certainly is a pretty nice vote of confidence that the county has you right there. What's involved in getting to be an approved vendor with a county? And Prince George is not a small county; it's a big county. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm familiar with the area. What's involved in you getting onto that? What does that say about your business?
Well, essentially, what you want to do is you want to have the proper licensing, of course, and you want to be able to build relationship. You have to know people at the court, of course, the clerk of the court, the different departments in the court, because a lot of times what will happen is you'll have people that are providers and they just simply don't know, how to be visible, how to
Right.
connect.
Right.
So, what I was able to do because I was so interested in this field, because I had a passion for it, I was able to make the necessary connections to make sure that I was able to gain the proper visibility.
Right.
So I understand the pain of the clients that we service. I mean, when you have someone that passes, there are different emotional roller coasters that some of these people, are encountering on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, outside of just personal representative business side of it. So I wanted to make myself as visible and as comfortable with the with the personnel and the customer base, that's in the community. My objective is to serve, and that's what this platform does, and the other platforms, that are teaching about probate support as well.
So, look, I really appreciate your time. And if a real estate agent or an attorney or a family wanted to get together with you to talk about your bond services in the DMV area, everybody from DMV is very proud of that initial. For those of us in the rest of the country, the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, those three areas together, they call DMV. If they want to get in touch with you, how's the best way to reach you?
Absolutely. You can reach me at ChancesBonding.com. And you can also reach me via email at ChancesBonding@yahoo.com. And of course, you can reach us via phone at 877-787-3380. We tried to serve the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, but we can also assist people in other parts of the country as well. So we welcome that business as, if the opportunity presents itself. So we're not restricted to the DMV, but we are open to serving nationwide. So if you want to reach us, you could reach us via web, via email, via phone. We'll be here to service you and give you the service that you need.
And that's, to be frank, you and I spoke and met before this call. We talked about it, and that's my goal. Is I want to work with a partner. Full disclosure, I chased this other bond company that's the leading company in LA, and they just didn't want to play. And I'm pretty persistent, if you know me, and I know people that know those people. And I think, like a lot of people in probate, they feel like they have a good thing and they just don't want to share. And that's not the world I come from. I help
Very
people,
true.
Even competitors. I feel like let's make a better playing field for everybody. So I'm looking to explore my relationship with you next time I need or a client of mine needs bond services, we're going to talk about that. And we've already kind of discussed that. And I would encourage anybody to, number one, reach out to Aaron to introduce yourself, see if you can do business with him. If not, ask him to introduce you to the Aaron Duncan of your local market, because he's connected nationally and can help you find those people. Okay? Fantastic. Aaron, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. I'll put your contact info in the chat box and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Bill.